Welcome, everyone. We have a pretty packed hour ahead of us today, so I'm going to get started right away. First of all, please know that this session is recorded and it will be shared with those who registered after the session. My name is Van-Brunschot. I work for WCEF2021, but I'm heading the Secretariat of the Circular Electronics Partnership, of which you will hear everything today. I will be your host for today's event. The event is called Circular Electronics, Pursuing a New Normal. This is an accelerator session under the World Circular Economy Forum 2021. Today, you'll hear about why circular electronics need to be the new normal, how the CEP is uniquely positioned to drive coordinated change, what is already happening, and how our member companies are already actively driving the transition, as well as the major industry-wide challenges and opportunities. And lastly, how can you get involved to the broader agenda? I just want to quickly check, is my screen showing? Yes? Okay, thank you. For those of you that are not that familiar with the need for circular electronics, here are some statistics. E-waste is our fastest growing waste stream globally and currently just poorly managed. Only 17% of waste is formally collected and recycled, which means over 80% is landfilled or processed informally. This can lead to environmental issues such as soil or water contamination, but also health impacts on populations involved in improper informal e-waste recycling. As if these aspects would not be sufficient to take action, the current management or mismanagement also leads to missed economic opportunities. The Global E-Waste Monitor estimates that the value of total raw materials in global e-waste is approximately $57 billion US dollars, mainly coming from iron, copper, and gold in the equipment. To make matters worse, ongoing digitalization, especially during COVID-19, sees a push for companies and consumers to go more and more digital. In developing markets, digitalization and wider use of electronics is also driven by improved accessibility and affordability, which obviously has major advantages when it comes to safe and sensible development, but will also have some major consequences for our ever-growing pile of e-waste, as well as the resources that are needed to manufacture these electronic devices. As e-waste is an industry-specific symptom of our general take-make-waste economic model, the 6 partners in the CEP decided to join forces, and instead of running their own individual initiatives on circular economy for electronics, they decided to strengthen their efforts by offering the industry a more holistic and coordinated approach through this partnership. To go a little bit deeper into that, I am very proud to introduce our keynote speaker, Nancy Gillis, CEO of the Global Electronics Council, one of the founding partners of CEP. Nancy has more than 20 years of experience leveraging sustainability to increase competitiveness, reduce risk, and foster innovation in both public and private sector organizations. Prior to joining the Green Electronics Council, Nancy was the global lead for resilience and responsible supply chains with Ernst & Young and managed sustainable procurement engagements for Fortune 100 companies. She joined EY from the US General Services Administration, the US federal government's procurement agency that oversees approximately $45 billion of annual spend. At GSA, she served as the Director of Federal Supply Chain Office, responsible for expanding the use of sustainability criteria and eco-labels in federal procurements. In short, Nancy really knows what she's talking about, and we're very happy to have her here. Nancy, are you here?
I am, and thank you for that incredibly kind introduction. It's
very happy to have
very
you
appreciated. So as Caroline had noted, I am the CEO of the Global Electronics Council, and we are a mission-driven nonprofit, and we're focused on creating a more sustainable and just world in leveraging the power of the purchaser. We were super excited to, I guess it's now been, oh my gosh, almost 2 years ago, to have been invited to join the Circular Electronics Partnership as a founding member. And I want to talk a little bit about why the Circular Electronics Partnership is not only a unique way of addressing the challenges that are faced by the technology sector writ large, but also let's just touch upon for a moment, as Caroline had mentioned herself, why do we need to take an approach that addresses challenges at scale? Because that's actually what the Circular Electronics Partnership is doing, addressing major environmental and social impacts that we're living through right now at scale. And the impacts that we're living through, the consequences of those impacts only allow an approach at scale and should not have anything but a global response. But let's just step back for a moment. Caroline had mentioned that there is a challenge that this particular partnership is seeking to address. And let me give you a couple of more data points so that we can understand what we are attempting to address. Caroline, if we could go to the next slide. So one of the things that the Circular Electronics Partnership is comprised of course, is a number of other founding partners. You see them reflected here. And I'm going to draw upon the research of one of them, the World Economic Forum, because they put out a report that highlighted in 2019, we had 92 billion tons of materials that were both extracted and processed. What's the consequence of that? Well, that was about half of the global CO2 emissions for that year alone. And what does CO2 lead to? Well, of course, we understand the impact of climate change. We're living through it. And climate change is one of the increasing fires, hurricanes, floods that not only have an incredibly detrimental economic impact in the loss of livelihoods, it increasingly has the direct impact of loss of life. It's unacceptable. Then, of course, as we talk about the Circular Electronics Partnership, we're looking at the tech sector. Well, what is unique to that? What's the impact that we're having? Well, it is the largest growing waste stream globally, right? And here, once again, nod to the World Economic Forum for the research that they do. Just in 2019, we had about 53 metric tons of electronic waste. That is expected to, by 2030, go up to about 75 metric tons. It's a ton of waste. And as Caroline had mentioned in her opening remarks, that waste is both a missed economic opportunity, but it's also a challenge from an ability of the sector to continue working, because what we are increasingly feeling is the reduced availability of necessary rare materials and minerals, but also it is a health and well-being concern, because these products are going to those countries and those communities that are least able to address the toxic impacts of these electronic waste piles being in their backyard. And so we cannot any longer have the electronic waste be the growing waste stream. So this has been a pretty sobering start to a number of comments. But what I'm excited to do is to now talk to you about, okay, this is a problem that all of the founding members of the Circular Electronics Partnership recognized, and they came together to do something about it. Now, what's unique? There are lots of partnerships that are out there that are currently looking at the technology sector, the role of technology, and how to address the challenges that technology provides from an environmental and social perspective, while also maintaining the benefits that technology provides. Simplistically, we right now could not engage absent technology, right? And that's really what COVID has brought to the forefront, the importance of technology for us to continue to be together. But what the Circular Electronics Partnership and the unique aspect of it as a partnership is something called the network of networks. And as you see here, the members, the founding members of that, they're organizations that bring a full network of other members with them. And that's very unique and very important. Because as I mentioned at the start of my comments, the challenges that we're facing right now, environmentally and socially, these are challenges that really need to be addressed at global scale. We really need to start benefiting and aggregating activities that are already underway. We no longer have the time to just dither about in talking what should we do. We actually have an idea of what we need to do, and we really need to bring what we are doing together. And that's what the Circular Electronics Partnership is doing. And the partners here that you see reflected, they bring with them predominantly the insights, the technical innovation, the understanding of the tech companies themselves, but they are also, as you hear from the panelists, representatives of other stakeholder groups. We, the Global Electronics Council, as I mentioned, we bring the voice of the purchaser. It's very important. But we also have voices that come from the recycling sector, which is also, as we talk about circularity, very important, as well as other sectors. So this network of networks is unique. And we are very excited that we're able to talk a little bit more about the perspectives of network representatives during the panel. Next slide. But then it's not only this network of networks, it's also a sectorial approach, and an approach that focuses on both the opportunities and challenges of transitioning from a sustainable yet linear approach to a true circular one. And so what the Circular Electronics Partnership has done is that network of networks pooled their understanding and resources. You see that we had 80 contributors, 30 companies, 7 organizations come together, and they pulled together to create a roadmap of bringing the entire sector to greater circularity by 2030. And this roadmap recognizes, yes, the important role that industry plays, but it also, through our participation and other participations, recognizes the role that not only industry, but policymakers, purchasers, those are also who are in the reverse logistics and recycling. And even as you hear today from one of our panelists, the role that security and data plays in bringing the entire sector to greater circularity. So let's talk about what some of these challenges and opportunities are. Now, I mentioned already reverse logistics. And this is as we transition from a more effective and efficient linear process, which is what we're living in right now, to a circular one. What really is highlighted is the need to very much more effectively and efficiently recapture the products that we put out into the market. And so the roadmap here has a focus on what can we do to actually think through at global scale what changes need to be done both from the sector itself, the industry participants, but also policy members in bringing a global electronics reverse logistics system to fruition. And that's a lot of challenges, but it's also a very big opportunity. Additionally, when we talk about going to circularity, we talk about really keeping more products in the market, right? So what is, and we're actually working on it, what is circular versus sustainable? Well, the definition hasn't yet been totally finalized, but one way that you could think about it, of course, is addressing the problem that I started my comments with, which is waste. So in even a sustainable linear system, there's still the expectation of ultimately there will be waste. Circularity tends to have a no waste system. The idea that we're actually not only keeping products in play for as long as possible, what we're also doing is recapturing them and having designed them and having a recycling technology know-how to really pull those material flows back into production streams. So you'll note that that's what the Circular Electronics Partnership is focused on as well. Again, in this roadmap, it's not only building a global reverse logistics system, which we don't currently have, it's also what are the opportunities to actually improve the recycling, and what are some of the design considerations to when we recapture these products, we're actually able to break them down and put them back into the material flows. It's a significant difference between circular and a sustainable linear system. And then lastly, what we're talking about, and this is something that our organization is really focused on, is what's the change for purchasing habits? Now, if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, the power of purchasing is recognized, and that one of the SDGs is focused explicitly on consumption and changing consumption patterns to those that are more sustainable. Well, in this instance, when we start talking from a technology sector perspective, one of the interesting changes we see is a shift from the buying of the stuff to the buying of the value of what the stuff provides, i.e., transitioning from a purchasing perspective that is not hardware driven, but service driven. And so I think you'll hear a little bit today from the panelists on how they're recognizing that circularity is helped when we, as individuals or representatives of organizations, continue to benefit from technology, but that we acquire that technology not to own it, but to actually have it as a service. And that then there is a new business model, an economic incentive to actually repair and refurbish these products so that they are able to be leased or rented over and over and over and over many more times that we currently see today. And of course, that transition to a service model is one that will also start positively addressing the scourge of e-waste. So you can see why we were very honored and excited to be part of the Circular Electronics Partnership, joining a number of other network entities who are coming together to really, from a sectorial approach, make a difference in addressing the environmental impact and social impacts that technology continues to have. And we are super excited as an organization to be able to bring as part of our participation the power of the purchaser. But that then concludes the opening comments I was requested to make. Let me now pass it back to Caroline, and more importantly, to the fantastic panelists that will follow and the points of view and discussions that they will engage in. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nancy. That was very clear, very passionate, very nice. Thank you. So since the launch of the partnership in March this year, we've seen a lot of interest from the industry, and we've been very fortunate to see our membership of companies really grow steadily. This community of companies provides us with a wealth of knowledge and expertise that fuels the project that we run, and they help us understand what is needed to make the industry move. In our aim to be able to say that we really represent the electronics industry, we are always open for new members to join, especially when they represent different parts of the value chain and different geographies. Before introducing you to a few of these members, I'll provide you with a little bit more detail on our vision and our roadmap. So the vision for CEP, in short, is the circular electronics industry establishes and strengthens loops, maximizes the value of components, products, and materials throughout the full life cycle using safe and fair labor. It depends only on circular resources and generates economic value while having a greater positive social and environmental impact. This is the vision for 2030, just to be fully clear on that. In the document behind the link that you see here on the slides, you can find the more detailed version of what that means, broken down into the 6 pathways that Nancy already briefly touched on just now. That also brings the structure to the roadmap 2030 that follows up onto this document. So the graph that we showed you just now, that is really the graph that is sort of at the heart of the roadmap as we wrote it. The 6 pathways are a call for the industry to design for circularity, to drive demand for circular products and services, to scale responsible business models for circular electronics, to increase official collection rates, to aggregate for reuse and recycling, and to scale secondary material markets. The roadmap outlines 40 actions across the 6 pathways that we, with the group that we just mentioned, that so the 80 participants of the working groups representing 30 companies, including the 7 partners, We've identified these actions as necessary to overcome the main industry-wide barriers for companies to accelerate their circular transition. Different actors and sectors need to play a role there. So the actions have been classified as action items for individual companies, for industry and partners, and asks for governments, NGOs, academia, and international organizations. At CEP, we are very aware that we are not the only initiative working on circular solutions for the electronics industry. And the roadmap, therefore, does not only set out our own agenda of projects, but it actually is an invitation to other initiatives active in the space to connect and to collaborate. How that really works, I will come to that later. For now, I think I heard my voice long enough, and I am sure that you would really like to hear from some of our members about their perspective in the panel that we have. I would like to introduce to you 4 companies within our membership, all in different parts of the value chain. So first of all, we have Ali Fan, the president of IT Renew. Welcome, Ali. We have John Shigerian, chairman and CEO of ERI. We have Haggai Alon, the CEO of Security Matters. And we have Scott O'Connell, senior director of regulatory engineering and environmental affairs for Dell Technologies. Welcome, everybody. I'm very happy to have you here. Can I ask you all to briefly introduce yourself and your company to the audience in order of appearance on the slide? So Ali, can I ask you to kick this one off?
Sure. Thank you, Caroline and Nancy. Great opening remarks as usual. Very insightful, and appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's a great, it's yet another great example of people coming together to collaborate and share ideas and to compel kind of ecosystem-wide action and knowledge transfer, which I think is kind of the crux of what we're trying to do with CEP and more broadly. So again, appreciate the invitation. My name is Ali Fan. I'm president at IT Renew. I personally have been building technology companies for the past 20 years or so, shifted my career exclusively in 2015 to a focus on circular and inclusive economic ideas and businesses, and found my way to IT Renew, which is truly a great platform for driving what I think is the kind of opportunity and imperative to transform the IT hardware industry to a more circular model. For us, what that means is very data center specific. So IT Renew is in the business of operationalizing a circular economy for data center equipment. So we work with some of the world's largest hyperscale cloud service providers, and we transition equipment that comes out of those environments, think massive fleets of millions and millions of servers, into secondary market solutions that span data center solutions to edge environment solutions in different form factors, components that go into other systems and so forth. And the whole idea is to think about, yes, we have an e-waste problem and we need more and more recycling, as the stats, Caroline, you showed yourself. But recycling is really the least worst alternative, right? We should, long before we get there, we should be doing much more interesting things with our equipment and thinking about kind of maximizing lifetimes across multiple lives. And that's the business IT Renew is in. I'm super excited to be able to tell you guys more about it and engage in the conversation today. Thank you. John.
Hello, and thank you for that introduction. Thank you, Ali, and thank you, of course, Caroline and Brendan for having us all today, and to all of my esteemed colleagues today that are on this panel. It's just an honor to be here and continue to message this important message. If we all agree that we're generationally moving now from a linear economy to a circular economy, as Caroline pointed out, and also Nancy pointed out in their opening comments, e-waste is the fastest growing solid waste stream in the world. But it was, when I got in this industry 19 years ago, the fastest growing solid waste stream in the world. It's now expanded to the fastest growing solid waste stream in the world by an order of magnitude of 5 times. So this is maybe one of the most imperative issues that we need to solve together. Because if what Nancy said was true, and it is, that 17% of all electronic waste is being responsibly recycled right now. That means there's 83% that we need to join together like we are at this great organization that we're all now members of and attack that 83%. That's our opportunity. It's not only our opportunity as an industry, it's an opportunity for the planet. This is one of the greatest ESG circular economy stories that's yet to be known. Yet to be known. It's still an industry that's off most people's radar. And coming together like this and at other great events like this is how we're going to raise the visibility. And that's why I'm so honored to be part of this great organization.
Thank you, John. Haggai, can I ask you to introduce yourself and your organization?
Yes, good morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, Caroline. Security Matters SMX is a technology that combines the physical to the digital to the blockchain. What we do is that we mark any kind of virgin material. So in the plastic industry, we call it from sand to silicon to product. And we allow through that unique capability to create full transparency from raw material, virgin material, to the product, to the waste, and then to everything related to dealing with the waste and reusing it again. And through our unique blockchain platform, which is pre-designed for sustainability and circularity, we interlink the different partners to one value chain. And I will address why I believe it's part of the ability to unlock the e-waste challenge. So this is what we do. We start from the physical. We create molecular sequences that are chemically embedded inside any kind of raw material, then transform into the form and shape of a finished good and product, sustain the life cycle until it's waste, and enable through tracking, authenticating, and being able to read at waste level the origin, not on packaging, but on origin level, when everything is logged on a blockchain, to transparently cooperate between different parties and different players along the value chain, and to reuse and to increase the reuse of the plastic waste. Thank you very much. I'm also honored. Back to you.
Thank you, Haggai. Whenever you talk about your technology, I get excited again. Thanks for explaining that. Scott, can I ask you to quickly introduce yourself and Dell Technologies?
Absolutely. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. Appreciate the opportunity to participate on the panel. So I'm Scott O'Connell with Dell Technologies. Dell's purpose is to create technologies that drive human progress. So obviously, circular economy has a key role in driving human progress as well, and connects well within our company. And so, as a company that creates technologies that are used by millions of people around the world, we recognize that we certainly have a large role to play in advancing circular economy, from everything we do around design to the sourcing of materials in our products, through as-a-service models that Nancy spoke about earlier, as well as ultimately the reuse, repair, and recovery of used electronics. And so to that end, we've set some ambitious 2030 moonshot goals, and we're really excited to participate in CEP and talk a little bit later on the panel around some of the challenges and opportunities to work together to advance the circular economy within the electronic sector. As stated earlier, this is a unique opportunity for the electronic sector to come together, to collaborate, work together, and really solve and address the challenges that were addressed earlier. So pleasure to be here, and look forward to the discussion.
Great, thank you, Scott. So while we're going to have the panel going on, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can really get a bit of up close and personal with our panel members. Let me quickly see how to do that again. There. My first question to all of you is, can you share a little bit about how your organization is already actively working towards the circular economy? I suggest that we go in the same order as just now. So Ellie, that means we start with you.
Sure, happy to. Terrific. So IT Renew, just, I guess this is a great way to set context for kind of how we think about, the various challenges and so forth, because I do think, whether you're a consumer electronics company, whether you're a purchasing organization, you're a recycler, whatever, everybody has a very different, every constituent has a very different vantage point and perspective on challenges and opportunities, as we'll talk about, and they're necessarily different. Consumers are very different than data centers and so forth, right? Our focus, as I mentioned, is very much on the data center industry, right? So if you think about kind of how remote everything, smart everything is powered today and will be increasingly powered, a lot of that is very much out of sight, right? We don't have servers in closets anymore in every enterprise or every small and medium business. A lot of stuff is run in the cloud. A lot of stuff is kind of out of sight, out of mind. It's run in data centers that are massive globally, right? Data centers I don't actually have the current kind of gigawatts of capacity on data on my fingertips, but massive infrastructure that is everywhere across the world and growing immensely, right? The largest companies like Amazon and Microsoft and Google and all of these, the major hyperscale cloud service providers operate fleets of millions and millions and millions of servers, and those numbers are growing exponentially. And when we start talking about edge infrastructure, which is going to be, that same type of compute and storage resources in much more local, distributed fashion to power 5G, kind of Web 4.0, industrial everything, smart everything, autonomous everything. That edge infrastructure is expected to be potentially as large as 4 times what is cloud already. So the scale of the infrastructure and the compute, the hardware resources are immense. IT Renew's business is in trying to orchestrate a global circular economic industry for those assets, right? So what we do is we have deep relationships with those major hyperscale cloud service providers, and we work with them to very securely decommission their equipment. They, in most cases, have very necessarily fast refresh cycles. So they are upgrading their fleets very, very frequently, much faster than kind of the normal technology treadmills, which means that there's an immense amount of lifetime remaining in that equipment. And we are trying to capture that value, both from a sustainability perspective and a financial perspective, by turning it into solutions that make sense for broader enterprise and other level cloud service provider kinds of markets. And so what we do in very plain English is we take racks of data center equipment. We turn those in some cases into fully recertified racks that go into other data centers. In some cases, we turn them into non-rack scale form factors, but same compute and storage resources, and sell those into other environments, whether that's smart cities, smart campuses, and so forth, small node types of form factors. And then we do also harvest where we can't sell complete solutions. We do an immense amount of harvesting of components and selling those components incrementally into system builders that are building everything from servers to PCs to laptops to gaming stations to set-top boxes to edge gateways to anything you can think of. And the reason that the rationale here is, as I mentioned previously, recycling should be our least worst alternative, right? So we should be catching everything in recycling and not only getting 17%, absolutely, but long before we get there, a circular economic theory says, hey, let's keep assets in their highest utility value as long as possible. And in the data center space, that means keep racks as racks, keep storage and compute resources as storage and compute resources, keep components as components. And only when we can no longer do that, do we think about capturing gold and cobalt and other minerals and so forth, right? So we have a global operations footprint and reverse logistics capability. We sit co-located with pretty much every data center hub in the world. We think about the world in kind of upstream, downstream. So we think about the hyperscale types of cloud service providers I mentioned on the upstream. And then downstream, we think about kind of every other system builder, enterprises that are running compute and storage infrastructure, and new sort of a new class of IT and compute and storage consumers or procurers on the downstream side which is this whole edge space, which basically you can think about anybody who owns real estate as potentially being an edge infrastructure location. And so, those are sort of the ends of our spectrum. And we try to do the engineering, the operations, the production, the support, the sales, the warrantying, and all of that in the middle to enable kind of viability of Second Lives in a variety of shapes. I'll stop there. I think that's a reasonable introduction of what we do.
Yeah, thank you. And it's also very clear that you are driving circularity pretty much from the heart of your organization and your company. Thank you. John, can I ask you, how is ERI already driving actively the circular economy for electronics?
Yeah, well, thank you again for that. Well, ERI, we take an approach that we handle all electronics. So everything from the smallest consumer electronic to cars that need to be now handled the right way with regards to data destruction, given that cars have become pretty much just computers on wheels. So we handle the whole spectrum of electronic waste. Now that includes materials that need to be shredded and commoditized. And we built, proprietarily built the world's largest electronic waste shredders, and also materials that need to be brought into our facilities, data wiped and repackaged, retested, resold. We also do parts harvesting. So there's nothing that we can't do in handling the e-waste streams that come out of North America and around the world. We have 10 locations, cover every zip code in the United States, and we have partners around the world because most of our clients are global. Now, when it comes to circularity, we were the group that created the Take Back program at Best Buy, which is one of the most world-known retail take-back programs, consumer take-back programs, and replicated that also at Staples and many other retailers. We handle all the retailers: Walmart, Amazon, Costco, of course, Best Buy, Staples, Target. They're all our type of clients. Now, when we talk about circularity, here's how we look at it. We think of the terms radical transparency. So when we had the opportunity to raise capital, we raised capital not just from benign capital, we raised it from strategic capital. So 11 years ago, 12 years ago, we took money in from LS Nico Copper. That's the LG family from South Korea. It's the second largest copper smelter in the world, and precious metal smelter. So all of our copper and precious metals go directly to LS Nico Copper, and now they sell to the OEMs who repurpose all of the metals that we sell. And 100%, people have to understand, when done correctly, e-waste recycling, responsible e-waste recycling, means that it's zero waste, zero landfill, zero emissions. So what that means is all of our commodities, glass, and this is order of weight: glass, steel, plastics, aluminum, copper, gold, silver, lead, palladium, and now the batteries, all go for beneficial reuse. All. It's the greatest circular economy out there that nobody talks about. The media doesn't talk about it, nor is it really known, unfortunately, when it comes to institutional investors, bankers, analysts, etc. That's part of the excitement of doing this, what we're doing together. So first, LS Nico Copper invested in us. They get all those materials. Alcoa was second. They get all the aluminum. Third was Redwood Materials, the co-founder of Tesla. Could have invested in anyone on the planet. He invested in us. He gets all our lithium-ion batteries and extracts all the materials out of those, which then go back to OEMs who are making new EV lithium-ion batteries and other type of lithium-ion batteries. And also now the Closed Loop Fund invested in us, and they're an upstream partner. So radical transparency as to where your money's coming from and where your materials are going is critical. Secondarily, we created proprietary software so our clients could come onto our platform 7/24 and check the disposition of their materials in our facilities. Again, radical transparency. And that's really the pillar of circular economy behavior. And like I said earlier, when done correctly, when done responsibly, e-waste recycling, whether you're doing it where Ali sits, where we sit, or other great responsible recyclers in the United States around the world, is one of the greatest circular economy opportunities and stories on this planet today.
Thank you. I think radical transparency, that's something that Haggai can speak to as well. I think also, Haggai, how you drive circularity with your technology is sort of clear already. Is there anything that you would like to add to what you just explained to us, how Security Matters is actively driving the circular economy?
Yes, thank you. What we are bringing to the electronics world is tools that are actually activated in other industries, mainly automotive, fashion, and gold and plastics, because electronics has the benefit and the challenge of having different kind of materials. What we do in a very simplistic way is we chart out measures that are tangible, measurable, and simple to implement. So we start with one material on one production line, on one country, on one aerial or regional waste process, and we create an effect, as John explained, of zero waste. This is one thing we do with some of the biggest brands in electronics. The other thing we do, and we will address it later, is the understanding that no industry can deal with the challenge on its own. So there has to be, in many ways, data, regulation, material transformation, a sharing on commercial basis, on economical basis, on logistic basis between different industries. And since we are a player at raw material and at waste level in different industries, so what we do with electronic companies is that we help them to find the next life cycle or the secondary application which is most relevant in a way that enables them to claim the sustainability fame and the carbon neutrality parameters. So these are the two very simplistic processes we do with companies, big and global companies in the electronics sector. Thank you.
Thank you. Lastly, Scott, same question for you.
Okay, great, thank you. It's always good to go at the end and kind of try to maybe build some threads here. So I think for us, and based on some of the other panelists, I mean, we've been actively working and driving circular economy within our company for over a decade, and I'd like to maybe focus on three areas of that. One would be at the beginning, right? The design of our products, and so looking at how can we design in circularity to our products and solutions so they're more durable and reusable, upgradable, repairable, and then ultimately, as Ali had talked about, we do have end-of-life electronics after we've gone through, hopefully several reuse and repair cycles. How do we make those products more easily disassembled by the companies in the recycling sector themselves? And that can be very practical things like eliminating screws or using the same type of screws. You don't have to have 5 different screwdrivers to take apart a laptop. So very practical things. And we also take our engineers into the recyclers and get feedback directly on the realities of the electronics recycling sector and how we can improve product design in future generations. The second area is that we've advanced a lot of use of recycled and renewable content into our products, from closing the loop on plastics, which we've talked a little bit about already, to gold and rare earth metals, as well as looking at opportunities to do the same with some of the chemistry and batteries. So that's certainly an exciting area, and one that I think CEP is very well positioned to connect those different parts of the value chain together to find where we can do that more at scale as an overall sector. And then the third area is around the service offerings to our commercial and consumer customers, around making it as easy as possible to recycle electronics, to be able to, through drop-off programs, partnerships, mail-back programs, or the kind of more sophisticated commercial asset recovery and data security service offerings that we provide. So making those services as accessible and easy to use to our customer base globally has been certainly a key part in enabling circular economy as well.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you all for those answers. Scott, just to stay with you here, can you tell us what are some of the industry-wide barriers and opportunities that organizations in the electronics industry face in the transition of towards circular economy? And maybe as a second question, sort of to tag along to that, is how does CEP help the industry accelerate that shift?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think in the interest of time, maybe I'll just pick on one area of that. Certainly others have other perspectives, but I think one of the things that we've learned, one of the challenges that we've learned in driving the circular economy for over a decade is that it really gets into looking at business completely differently from, as I said, design through the materials that you're using all the way through the recovery and reuse part of the life cycle. And I think one of the challenges is our supply chains are built for a linear economy, both the manufacturing supply chain as well as some of the remanufacturing supply chains. And so you've really got to understand from end to end the supply chain, where you can drive circularity, where are there opportunities. And I think that we're finding that we're going to need to reach out and collaborate, not just within where CEP can come together, is bring companies that have either like or similar supply chains together to explore opportunities to scale. We know we can't do this alone. Other companies in our sector have set similar 2030 goals. I think this is a great opportunity for us to all come together to collaborate and identify where we can scale through collaboration. Co-opetition is something that we like to talk about in this space, right? We're certainly competitors in the market, but I think from a circularity perspective, there's a lot of opportunity to collaborate more, share more best practices and opportunities. And I think CEP is for the first time really a great opportunity to convene all of those stakeholders in one organization through the pathways that were talked about in the roadmap to identify, I think there's some near-term opportunities, and then maybe there's some harder, longer-term opportunities that may take longer to address, and breaking that out is going to be really important.
Great, thank you. Haggai, maybe from your perspective, from where you sit in the value chain or the role that you play, what do you think are some of the major blocking points or hurdles and opportunities, and how does CEP play that role in releasing those?
So I'll start with the good news. The good news is that everybody reads what the new EU Green Deal and the new future Biden administration coming up regulation, understand that change is here. And if I need to chart out the challenges and the barriers, they are the following. A, there is no relation between digital tracking, compliance and regulation to physical tracking, compliance and regulation. And until the physical and the digital, and this is what we do, are not united to one compliance regulative system, we're going to continue suffer for problems. B, everything related to waste, and in that sense, it works for plastics and for electronics and for fashion, suffers from the problem that nations are fairly well, I think, organized around the UN, which deals with whatever the UN deals. But I think now it's the time for a UN for waste. Yes, there are UN initiatives, but until there is no global regulation and standardization of sourcing, producing, and dealing with waste, global companies are challenging barriers that even when they want to do better, and I believe they do, they are confronting challenges that are almost impossible. The third barrier is the fact that you have total different regulation related to sourcing, raw material regulation, production, and waste. There is just no literally connection between the three basic life cycles. These three barriers are started to be addressed and understood by the EU Green Deal new regulation. And this is actually part of what we're doing with global companies, helping them to digest and then to transform it to an action plan that addresses the physical to digital, the different location, globals, and manufacturing sites, and the fact that they as the brand are responsible for regulations and for rules of responsibility for waste or virgin materials that they have no influence or no direct influence on, and how do they work upstream and downstream. So these are the three key barriers as we feel them from the OEM and brands and the leading global brands. And as I said, there's good news. Things are moving towards the what I believe is the right direction. And I think the work of World Business Council at that sense on influencing and verbalizing the challenges of the industry and businesses in the electronic sector is something that for a fact had an influence. Thank you.
Thank you. Just in view of time, I have two questions left. John, I'm gonna go with you for the second, and Ellie with you for the, sorry, John with you for the first, Ellie with you for the second. John, what are some of the value chain broad discussions that need to happen for a circular electronics industry to take flight? We have only a few minutes left before I need to start the closing, so I need to ask you to be a bit brief.
Yeah, I mean, more collaboration. With 83% of the opportunity in front of us as an industry, as a world goes, it's not a zero-sum game. There's a massive opportunity for us to tackle, and doing it together like we're doing today is really the future. All the stakeholders, OEMs, retailers, and everybody on this panel today, everyone benefits. Electronics make our personal and our professional lives more connected, more interesting. We're doing it today over this electronic medium just today. But also the same holds true on the backside of the story. All the stakeholders have to become part of the solution. Retailers, OEMs, recyclers, consumers even, all of us. And that's how we're gonna go tackle this problem successfully. And that's how we're gonna make a difference. So CEP being the glue and the catalyst for more collaboration is a huge winning combination for today and the future.
Thank you. Thank you for both of those answers and the compliment. Ellie, last question for you. Looking what is needed within the ecosystem to shift to circularity, what type of expertise or industry representation do you think is still needed in CEP to be more effective in its approach?
Yeah, thank you. And by the way, I mean, I think all of this is like the collaboration, the data, the transparency, all of this is the backbone, right? That's exactly what's needed to get kind of everybody, the whole ecosystem moving forward. I think candidly, the next big frontier and the one that may help us all collectively kind of tip the scales further is on the carbon accounting side, right? And I think that's where I would say within CEP, we can push harder and we can push further. And the reason I say that is this is very much about, circularity is very much about waste, which we know we have an e-waste problem, as everybody has pointed out. But candidly, the big goals that people are marching towards right now are net zero goals, and it's all about decarbonization. I think there's broad recognition that the supply chain, especially in electronics, accounts for the significant majority of anybody's carbon footprint as a company anyway. And so I think if we can push harder on the carbon accounting nature of electronics across the life cycle, which will show very clearly that manufacturing is the significant majority of carbon tied to electronics, then once we can figure out how to let people take credit for circularity, whether that's scope 4 avoided emissions, whatever that is, how we share the benefit of circularity across the various constituents, primary users, secondary users, and so forth, then I think we give another big carrot for people to take meaningful action, right? So to me, as I think about CEP, it is a network of networks. It is absolutely a convening body that is critical to all of this. So I think there's great foundation. And if we can next push forward on the carbon accounting piece in addition to the waste piece and kind of the business model piece, then we may just find that we've got something people can really latch onto and drive like actual change in behaviors tied to. And this seems like a really good forum to start to drive that conversation further.
That's a great point. Thank you very much. I think that closes the panel up really well as well. I'd like to give a big thank you to all our panelists for sharing your expertise and your insights. We have a clear idea now of what our members' motivations are. Now I'd like to just look in the last 5 minutes and give you a glimpse into how you can get engaged with CEP. Let me share my screen. So as mentioned earlier, within the 6 pathways, the roadmap calls out 40 specific actions that need to be addressed in the short, the medium, and the long term. Current CEP activities already include projects that are running or being scoped all across the pathways. From a working group focusing on what exactly constitutes a circular product or service, to pledges for purchasing teams to increase circular procurement over the coming years, to public-private roundtables addressing the transboundary movement of materials, and pilots for technologies that need to facilitate tracking and tracing of materials through the value chain. Those are just to name a few of the activities that are ongoing with CEP right now. That is a great start. We're very happy with that, but 40 actions is a lot in a time span of 20 years that we planned. And that is 10 years, sorry. And that is where we are relieved to know that we are not the only initiative out there working to help the industry's circular transition. We would love to collaborate with anyone that can or is already contributing to the same agenda. Some of the open actions in the roadmap are, for example, P4.1, map the global take-back system. We know there are tons of data out there, and if your organization is working on exactly this, we'd love to hear from you. Or for individual companies, P3.4, invest in circular business models with positive social and environmental impact. If this is something that you have an expertise in, or you want to share, or you would like to explore with others, please reach out to us. Or for governments, we have P1.4, creating an enabling environment for the sale of circular products and services. If this is something that you think your policymakers should be focusing on and you want to explore further how, get in touch with us. And if you're interested in driving or participating in P4.3, increase public-private cooperation in the development of effective EPR, please don't hesitate to get engaged. These are just 4 out of the whole list of actions that we have. If none of the above sound interesting to you, we invite you to look at the remaining 32 actions in the agenda. If for any of them you wish to contribute or collaborate with us, please do get in touch. Besides the membership for companies, we currently offer 2 ways of engaging with CEP. First of all, in the form of a project proposal. So if your organization is already running or scoping a project that responds to one of the roadmap actions, please reach out to us through this form, the CEP Ally Project Proposal Form. You can find here the link that will be sent to you in the slide deck later on, and the QR code. If you are an individual, however, that has invaluable knowledge and you're interested in strengthening some of our projects, we invite you to fill out the other short form, the CEP Knowledge Contributor Contact Form. We would love to hear from you, and we really want to work with you. We can't wait to get in touch and include you in our network. There really is a substantial amount of work that needs to be done to make the circular electronics a reality, and collectively, we simply just don't have the time to do things twice, as Nancy mentioned as well. With this invitation to reach out to us, I will close the session for today. I would like to thank our speakers today, Nancy, Ellie, John, Haggai, and Scott. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for the World Circular Economy Forum that hosted us, and to everyone that helped in the organization of this session. And finally, I'd like to thank everyone in the virtual audience for your interest in CEP, and we look forward to connecting soon. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.